Friday night, the Emirates Arsenal are back. But this time, they walk into a Premier League season with a very different status. They're not the challengers anymore, they are the champions. And when Coventry City arrive at the Emirates on Friday night, Arsenal will begin the defense of the Premier League title they finally won last season. On paper, this is the kind of fixture Arsenal should win, a newly promoted Coventry side against the reigning champions in North London on the opening night of the season. But football really cares about the paper, and there are already some interesting questions surrounding Mikel Arteta's team. Test against Manchester City in the Community Shield? Arsenal passed it emphatically, 3-0. It was not just the result, it was the manner of the performance. Arsenal looked sharp, organised and ready for competitive football. Now, they have to prove they can defend it, and that brings us to the squad. Arsenal has strengthened significantly with Bruno Guimarães, one of the major additions. Christos Tzolis has also caught the eye during pre-season. But there's one area where Arteta still has some problems to solve. The defense. William Saliba remains unavailable while Jurrien is still working his way back to full fitness. That explains Arsenal's move for Ezri Konsa from Aston Villa. Konsa brings Premier League experience, versatility and defensive reliability. But the timing of the transfer means he's unlikely to be involved against Coventry. So Arteta has to work with what he has. Unfortunately for Arsenal, some very important players are available. You know who they are, but you feel the list yourself. These players give Arsenal control, creativity and experience at precisely the moment when you want your opening day performance to look authoritative. Then there's Coventry, and this is where we should be careful about dismissing the visitors. They are back in the Premier League after 25 years away, and they did not arrive by accident. Under Frank Lampard, Coventry scored 97 goals in their championship campaign. They were aggressive, productive, and dangerous from set pieces. They've also invested heavily to give themselves a chance of surviving in the Premier League. And then there's a little piece of football theatre. Victor Gyökeres, before he became Arsenal striker, Gyökeres was at Coventry. He scored 43 goals for them. Now his former club are coming to the Emirates, and the man they once depended on could be lining up against them in Arsenal colours. Football does have a sense of humour. So how does this game play out? I expect Coventry to be cautious. They cannot afford to give Arsenal space between the lines, and they certainly cannot allow Saka and Arsenal's other attackers to run freely into the spaces behind them. Lampard's best opportunity may come through transitions and set pieces. Arsenal, meanwhile, will want to establish control quickly. The key could be the first goal. If Arsenal score early, Coventry will have to change the game plan. And once they start opening up, the difference in quality should become obvious. But if it remains 0-0 for an hour, the pressure might shift. Coventry might grow in confidence. The Emirates might become slightly more anxious, and suddenly the champions might have a problem. But I don't think that happens. My prediction is Arsenal 3, Coventry 0. I expect Arsenal to control the match, score in the first half, and then use their superior quality to put the game beyond Coventry. Saka is an obvious candidate to get on the score sheet. Gyökeres is another. And Bruno Guimarães is the player I will be watching particularly closely because his arrival represents something bigger than one new signing. Arsenal are building a squad for sustained success, and that is the real story of this opening night. Last season, Arsenal were chasing the Premier League title. This season, everybody else is chasing them. That changes the psychology of the season. Every opponent wants a piece of the champions. Every dropped point becomes a headline. Every poor performance becomes evidence that perhaps Arsenal cannot sustain it. So Friday night is not just about beating Coventry. It is about setting the tone. The champions are back, and now Arsenal have to show us whether winning the title was the destination or just the beginning. Ezri Konsa, bio, bio. Ezri Konsa, bio, bio. Ezri Konsa, bio, bio. He's a and so on and so forth. Arsenal have reportedly reached an agreement with Aston Villa for the England international Ezri Konsa, with the deal understood to be worth around 50 to 51 million pounds. Personal terms are also believed to be in place, with the medical expected to be the next major step. And this is pretty interesting because Konsa is not necessarily the kind of player Arsenal would have been expected to chase at the beginning of the summer. But circumstances have changed. Arsenal are starting the season with defensive concerns, particularly with William Saliba and Jurrien dealing with fitness issues. And suddenly, having an experienced Premier League defender who can play both centre-back and right-back makes a lot of sense. Konsa also brings something difficult to buy in the transfer market: familiarity. He knows the Premier League. He knows what it means to defend against the pace and physicality of English football, and he's been playing at a high level with Aston Villa for several seasons. He's also an England international, so this is not a gamble on potential. Arsenal are essentially buying a player who is ready to contribute immediately. The interesting question, though, is whether Arsenal are buying Konsa as an emergency solution or as part of the longer-term squad, because at 28 he's entering his prime rather than being a developmental signing. If Saliba, Timber, Gabriel and Konsa are all fit, Mikel Arteta suddenly has some serious options in that defensive unit. And Konsa's ability to move across to right back gives Arsenal another layer of flexibility. There's also the money. Aston Villa were reportedly looking for closer to £60 million, while Arsenal's earlier position was considerably lower. So if this deal does eventually come in around 51 million, then Arsenal have clearly decided that the player's versatility, Premier League experience and immediate availability justify stretching the budget. And frankly, that tells you something about Arsenal's thinking. This is not a club behaving like it has finished building. Champions or not, Arteta and the recruitment team are still looking for ways to make the squad harder to break. Konsa may not be the headline-grabbing superstar signing that gets everybody excited on social media, but he could prove to be one of those very useful Arsenal additions that makes much more sense once you watch the season unfold. The immediate priority now is the medical. If that goes through without a problem, then we can start talking about Ezri Konsa as an Arsenal player, rather than another name on the transfer rumor list. Ezri Konsa, Ezri Konsa, Ezri Konsa. There are some football fans who support a club because their parents did, others because their friends did. And then there are people for whom the club is simply part of the geography of their home. Little Sims is one of those people. Born and raised in Islington in North London, Simbiatu Little Sims at Jikawu grew up close enough to Highbury for Arsenal to be more than a football club. She attended Highbury Field School right beside Arsenal's old stadium and has said that the club represented the part of London she came from. She supported Arsenal since she was a child and by her own account never seriously considered anybody else. And there's something rather fitting about Little Sims being a Gunner, because if you know her music, you know that she's always carried herself with a certain independence. She came through London's creative scene on her own terms, built her career without needing to fit in neatly into somebody else's box, and developed a voice that is unmistakably hers. There's also a family connection to the football. Sims has spoken about her older brother helping to pass that Arsenal affection down to her. Her mother bought her first Arsenal shirt. She remembers traveling by bus to Cardiff for an Arsenal match as a child, and at one point she was even a goalkeeper for her school team. So this is not some celebrity discovering Arsenal because the club became fashionable. This goes way back. In fact, when asked about the players of her younger years, Sims was unapologetically old school. Thierry Henry was her man, and that tells you something about the era in which her Arsenal identity was formed. Now, this is the Arsenal of Highbury, the Arsenal of Henry, Vieira, Bergkamp, and the generation of players who made the club feel like a statement about football itself. And perhaps that explains another interesting thing about Sims. She's never seemed particularly interested in nostalgia for nostalgia's sake. When asked whether she missed Highbury, her response was essentially, "Why would I? What matters is that it is still Arsenal." That is actually a very Arsenal way of looking at history. Respect what came before, keep the identity, but move forward. And now in 2026, there is another little chapter to this story. Little Sims has been spotted representing the Arsenal 2026-27 away kit, putting a very recognizable North London face behind the shirt. Which brings us neatly to the point. Arsenal has always been bigger than the 90 minutes. It is music, it is culture, it is neighborhoods, families, memories, and the strange little rituals that turn a football club into part of your identity. For Little Sims, Arsenal is woven into all of that. She grew up around Highbury. She wore the shirt as a kid. She traveled to matches with her family. She became an artist from the same North London environment that shaped her football loyalties. And now, when you see one of Britain's most distinctive artists wearing Arsenal colours, it does not really feel like a brand partnership. it feels like home. Not London produced Little Sims, and somewhere along the way, Arsenal became part of her soundtrack. There's a rather nice Arsenal connection hiding in the new season of Ted Lasso. Leah Williamson is not joining the cast as an actress. She's not playing herself, and she's not becoming one of AFC Richmond's fictional players. Instead, the Arsenal and England defender has had a behind-the-scenes role as a football consultant, helping the production get its portrayal of women's football right. Reports also indicate that Williamson was consulted specifically around the writing of the second episode. Now, the show has moved from the familiar world of AFC Richmond's men's team into women's football. Ted Lasso returns to Richmond and takes charge of a newly established second division women's side, the Lady Greyhounds. Apple describes this as Ted's biggest challenge yet. And suddenly, the writers have a whole new football culture to get right. Season 4 premiered on August 5, 2026, and new episodes are being released weekly through October 7. There's more happening around Arsenal this season than just transfers and tactics. The club is also expanding its commercial empire, and some of the names joining the Arsenal brand are pretty interesting. The headline new partner is Deel. From the 2026-27 season, Deel becomes Arsenal's official sleeve partner, taking over from Visit Rwanda. So when you see the new Arsenal shirts in competitive action, Deel will be on the sleeve. And then there's Google. Arsenal have entered into a strategic partnership with Google, with Gemini becoming the club's official consumer artificial intelligence partner, while Google Pixel becomes the official smartphone partner. The partnership is not simply about putting a Google logo somewhere around the Emirates. It's about using artificial intelligence and technology to create new experiences for supporters. In other words, Arsenal are increasingly presenting themselves as a technology and media brand, as well as a football club. Then there are partnerships that are continuing. Hotels.com remains an official Arsenal partner. Cadbury have extended their relationship with the club through to the end of 2029-2030 season. And of course, there's Emirates. That relationship has been extended through to 2033. From the 2027-28 season, Emirates will become the club's sole front of shirt sponsor, which makes an already long-running relationship even more significant. So when we talk about Arsenal's commercial growth, we are talking about much more than shirt sponsorship. The club is building a portfolio that stretches across travel, technology, consumer products, financial and business services, and global lifestyle brands. And there's a lesson here for us as Arsenal supporters, but also for anybody working in media. Arsenal are monetizing attention. They have a global audience, and they are giving brands access to that audience through football, content, technology, hospitality, and community. That's the real business behind the badge. The football still comes first, obviously. But off the pitch, Arsenal are becoming a rather sophisticated media and commercial operation. And if the club continues growing globally, expect that list of partners to get even longer, because apparently there's always room for one more sponsor on the Arsenal shopping list. Dear Arsenal hater, welcome back. I imagine you've been looking forward to this season. Not because you want to see Arsenal succeed, of course, but because another opportunity has presented itself to complain, snare, predict collapse, and remind everyone that Arsenal are somehow not quite as good as they think they are. I know your routine by now. If Arsenal win, you will explain why the opposition was poor. If Arsenal win comfortably, you will say the result was expected. If Arsenal win a difficult game, you will find something else to criticize. If Arsenal draw, you will call it a bottle job. And if Arsenal lose, well, that is your Christmas morning. You'll be watching every match, probably more closely than some Arsenal supporters, waiting for the first mistake. A misplaced pass, a missed chance, a questionable substitution, one defensive lapse, anything that allows you to lean back and say, there we are, I told you. And that is the funny thing about being an Arsenal hate watcher. You have to watch Arsenal quite a lot. You have to know the fixtures. You have to know the players. You have to know the manager's decisions. You have to follow the transfer window. You have to understand the tactics. Even yourself, you got to keep up with the table. In other words, you have accidentally become an Arsenal fan with an unusual emotional investment in Arsenal failing. So, as the new season begins, I have a small request. Watch carefully. Because this Arsenal side is not the same Arsenal side you've been watching for the last few years. This team is mature now. There are higher expectations, there's greater pressure, there's also something you may find particularly uncomfortable. Arsenal have become a team that expects to compete. That means you may have to work a little harder this season. You cannot simply point at Arsenal's past and pretend it explains their present. You cannot keep recycling the same jokes about bottling it, celebrating second place, or being almost good enough. At some point, you have to acknowledge what is actually happening in front of you. And yes, Arsenal will lose games. They'll make mistakes. Players will have poor matches. Decisions will be questioned. Injuries, now on a normal now. There'll be moments when supporters are furious. That's football. The difference is that Arsenal supporters are not asking you to believe the team is perfect. We're asking you to watch the whole thing. So go ahead, set your notifications, clear your calendar, keep the television remote within reach. When Arsenal kick off, you will be there. When Bukayo Saka scores, you will pretend you're not impressed. When Declan Rice controls the midfield, you will find something else to discuss. When the defense keeps another clean sheet, you will remind everyone that it was only Coventry, or whoever happens to be standing in Arsenal's way that afternoon. And when Arsenal eventually lose, I know you will emerge from wherever you've been hiding. You will type, "I have been saying this for years." And we will probably laugh because now the arrangement be that. You watch Arsenal, we support Arsenal. You look for the cracks, we look for the progress. And somewhere in between, we all experience the ridiculous, wonderful, occasionally infuriating thing that is football. So Arsenal hate watcher, enjoy this season. Take notes, keep receipts, prepare your victory speeches. But remember one thing, if you're going to spend the next 9 months watching Arsenal, you might as well watch properly. You may just end up learning something. And who knows, by May, you might even find yourself enjoying the football. You say? No worry, we don't tell anybody.
The new season is here, and I want to hear from you. What are you expecting from Arsenal this season? Which player are you most excited to see? What are your biggest hopes, your biggest concerns, or even the one thing you think could make or break our campaign? Send me a voice note, include your name and location. Keep it short, keep it honest, and say exactly what's on your mind. Go to speakpipe.com/upgunnerspodcast and leave your message. I'll be listening, and some of your thoughts could make it onto an upcoming episode of Upgunners. So Gunners, the microphone is yours. What are you saying about Arsenal going into the new season? Speakpipe.com/upgunnerspodcast.
Upgunners!